In 2022, I embarked on the crazy project of self-building, practically all by myself from A to Z, an ecological house with a limited budget. For that, I chose to use second-hand shipping containers. By late 2023, after 2 years of construction, I moved in, despite the work not being entirely finished. To start 2025, I want to give you a review of this first year, 2024, in my container house. Hi, I'm Julian Malara, and today I'll share my experience of the first 12 months. Do I regret my choice of having made a container house? And above all, do I still advise you to embark on this type of housing project? Really, this video, it's going to be a rather subjective feedback, but it's going to be very valuable for you. Whatever type of house you want to build, whether it's with container, concrete or wood, or whatever material actually. In 2024, I invited many people to my house. I was glad to have a home and shared it with those around me. I invited friends, I invited family. They spent several days, several nights here in this atypical house, but not so atypical after all. Why do I say it's not so atypical? Because most of the people who came, even all of them, left after an hour or two. They all said that we forget we're in a container house as it's quite a classic house after all. Even my grandmother, who is very critical of my life choices, a bit weird. I am vegan, I am a YouTuber, I live in a shipping container house. And, well, she approved of the house. She told me, frankly, your house. It's a real beautiful classic house. In fact, it's not as atypical as that. So if it's approved by my grandmother, it will suit everyone, right? This is the first feedback I can give you. It's an atypical house, not so atypical as that. And it has pleased everyone who has visited it. And moreover, if you decide to hide the container walls with drywall, well, it will become an even more classic house and therefore will suit even more people. The most important feedback, and the reason you're watching this video, was it comfortable to live in this house for the past 12 months, whether in winter or summer? If you saw my last video, professionals came to test the insulation of my house and they found that it was very well insulated. I'm in DPEA, so it's almost the best rating. For heating and air conditioning, I installed a heat pump that blows hot or cold air through a false ceiling throughout the house. I also made a dedicated video on this topic if you're interested. One of the first things people tell me when they come into my house is that they're surprised at how comfortable it is, whether it's winter or summer. And they're not just surprised because it's shipping containers, but because they say, even in a traditional house, the temperature doesn't feel uniform and enveloping. And that's really the result of two factors: very good insulation and a very good heat pump. The advantage of everything going through a false ceiling is that it provides a very uniform feeling throughout the house. You don't get the impression of having something blowing hot or cold air in your face like you can with traditional splits, for example. Even though I admit, since the heat comes from the false ceiling, we get a bit cold feet in winter since the heat struggles to reach the floor. Underfloor heating would have been much more comfortable, but the heat pump in the false ceiling allows for ultra-efficient air conditioning in summer, so I think it's the best compromise. And in terms of feeling, it's also great because I always have a humidity of around 50%, which is very good and means that my ventilation system, coupled with my water heater, works very well. To improve summer comfort, I would need to add sun breaks above my windows and glass doors. This would block the sun in the summer while letting it through in the winter. And to increase winter comfort, what I'm doing is finishing installing roller shutters on each of the joineries to reduce heating needs. I told you the summer and winter comfort was very cool. But the more important question is it because I cranked up the heating and air conditioning? Or is it really because it's an energy efficient house? So we're going to get to the heart of the matter. How much did I pay for electricity in 2024? How much did this house consume? My house is 116 square meters and runs entirely on electricity. I have a dishwasher, a washer dryer, a fridge freezer, an induction hob, an oven, a microwave. lots of devices like my computer and my television, which still consume quite a bit. But I especially have a thermodynamic water heater and a heat pump. I made 2 videos about these products. They are ultra energy efficient, but they are still the ones that consume the most. That's just for context. My house is not low-tech at all. I could have had a much more low-tech house than that. That's kind of my goal. Maybe in the long term, maybe it's your goal too. There you have it. I own a classic French house with many appliances that consume electricity. I also tested many solar panels this year, saving me around 200 in electricity costs. I could have produced a lot more, but for each test for the videos on this YouTube channel, I would unplug the old panels to test the new ones. So I really didn't produce much. 200 euros for electricity is quite low. In 2024, I spent 1,930 on electricity, including 150 euros for my EDF subscription, which comes out to 77 euros per month. Without my solar panels, it would have cost me 94 euros monthly. Eload shows my consumption is highest when it's cold outside, indicating that heating is my main expense. The water heater and all the other appliances didn't consume as much as that in the end. In 2025, I think I will be able to greatly reduce my heating consumption by better programming my heat pump. And above all, my towel dryer. Because yes, this towel dryer, I programmed it badly, and it still cost me almost 100 euros of electricity over the year 2024. So be careful with small appliances. They can quickly consume a lot of electricity. But well, there you have it. 94 euros of electricity per month. It remains consistent for a house of this size that runs entirely on electricity. Tell me in the comments if you find this relevant. Based on my thermal study, it stays consistent. I'm not over-consuming compared to the original plan. But in 2025, I plan to install 3 to 6 kW of solar panels on the roof, and that should reduce my consumption by at least 80%. I would only have the EDF subscription left. Ultimately, that's my goal. To see if I succeed, subscribe to this channel. I'll make multiple videos on this in 2025. By the way, if you're interested in building a house out of a shipping container because you think it's a good idea, we've launched a service on the site maisonconteneur.fr where I offer to accompany you from the building permit to the end of the construction to ensure that you build a container house under good conditions, that it is well insulated, that it doesn't cost you too much. In short, I can help you with your project. Check out the info in the video description. Otherwise, just subscribe to this YouTube channel for free. We've made over 30 videos on each step of building this container house. We're going to continue making videos on this topic in 2025, so subscribe. I've talked a lot about thermal insulation, but what also worried you a lot was sound insulation. Well, I live in the countryside. There isn't much noise outside, but my property is still attached to a county road where a few cars pass by. It's not all day, and I admit it doesn't bother me. We don't really hear the cars, but that's not due to the shipping container. It's mainly because I've insulated my walls and roof very well. Wood wool on my walls and cellulose wadding on the roof, and these are rather good insulators from an acoustic point of view. And there you go. There are a lot of cars passing by. Did you hear them on the camera? We don't know. We'll see that in the editing. Sound insulation is also important for houses with saintry roofs, especially during frequent rain. They can complain about the loud resonating noise it makes when hitting the sheet metal. I have my ethylene propylene diene monomer with a lot of watts of cellulose underneath and oriented strand board. So I don't hear the rain at all, honestly. When there's bad weather outside, I hear very little noise. However, I admit that when there are gusts of wind, the house shakes a little. It's quite light compared to a concrete house. From a sound perspective, it's really quiet inside. Even if there's a storm outside, I can sleep without hearing much noise. The same when it's very hot. I don't have the problem of having cladding, for example, in steel, which cracks and makes noise, like we had, for example, in Berenice's house there. The wooden cladding doesn't make noise. Well, there you have it. The fact that the walls are made of shipping containers doesn't significantly affect the resonance inside. It doesn't resonate more than in a traditional house with plasterboard because steel might resonate more. The corrugation breaks the sound. So all in all, it's generally like a normal house. The only thing I regret is that the walls, my partitions that I made between the different rooms, they are 700 centimeters because that's the standard size of a classic house. Now we tend to use 10 centimeters to be able to put more sound insulation and have better insulation between the different rooms. So if I had to do it again, I would make 10 centimeter partitions and I would still double some container partitions with plasterboard to be able to put more sound insulation and have more privacy between the different rooms of the house. I admit that I live alone in my house with my girlfriend. We don't have any children. When we invite people over, we make noise with them, and then everyone goes to bed and no one makes noise anymore. The sound insulation doesn't bother us too much. Of the house, let's say. But it's true that if you have children or if you still want a house that is much better soundproofed, inside put 10 centimeter well-insulated walls between each room and above all, double the walls of the shipping containers. With a good sound insulator and especially acoustic drywall, I didn't know that existed before, put acoustic drywall. It's important and will always be better. It doesn't bother me, but you, in more traditional uses, consider adding more insulation. In the design of the house too, we decided not to put a corridor to separate the day areas and the night areas. It doesn't bother us much. It bothers my girlfriend a bit when I try to sleep in and she wants to do her gym in the living room. But there you have it. If you have children, yes, put a separate corridor, day area, night area. It will be more pleasant. It will make you lose a little space. But I think it's essential, depending on, well, your lifestyle habits. To conclude, overall, my house, I designed it to suit me, my needs, so I'm very happy with it, but your needs are not the same, so don't exactly copy what I've done here. Maybe adapt more or less sound insulation, more or less day area, night area to have more privacy, depending on the size of your family and how you want to live on a daily basis. There you go. We've done a review on thermal insulation. It's great sound insulation. It's perfect. But the comment that comes up the most on this YouTube channel is about wave insulation, the famous Faraday cage. So me, I'm in the countryside. So even outside, we barely get. Your input doesn't seem to be a metric system unit. Please provide a valid metric system unit. So it's normal that we don't get much inside. Internet, but on the other hand, the telephone network and Wi-Fi work without a problem. All my lights and all my switches in the house are connected. I have a lot of connected devices outside. I have my car and my solar panels that are connected to the Wi-Fi box inside. I've never had a connection problem, so there's no caching effect, or at least it poses no problem. But what scares you? It's not so much that I'm isolated from the waves. It's that the areas that are inside bounce too much, and that we live in a microwave, and that it causes me health problems. So on that, in the short term, I can tell you that I have not seen any notable problem over the last 12 months. From a scientific point of view, it has not been proven that the low frequency waves from your home devices cause health problems unless you are really very electrosensitive. But overall, there is no risk with the small waves that are in our house. So I don't think it's a real problem. The fact that it's a container house and you leave the Wi-Fi on all night. Nothing has proven it so far, but please share your thoughts in the comments. For now, overall, all my feedback is very positive. I'm very happy with the choices I've made, and I'm still convinced that it's a good idea to build a house out of a shipping container. But if I had to do it over, I would do one thing differently. I'm retracting statements made in several previous videos. In the end, I think I wouldn't leave the container walls exposed. I would double them with drywall, and for several reasons. The first reason, and which is really the most important, is that all the finishes of my house are super annoying to do. They cost a lot, and in addition, they are not well done. They're not nice finishes, simply because the undulations are never regular, and there is never anything standardized for a finish on container walls. In Le Romain, for example. So you're always dealing with objects, tinkering with stuff. It's annoying, it's imperfect, and really it's a big downside, I think, in having kept the walls in shipping container. Second reason, I said it before, the fact of doubling with plasterboard walls. It would have also allowed me to gain a little bit in thermal insulation, but especially a lot in sound insulation because I could have added some insulation. Having soundproof plasterboard, it would have added overall sound comfort to the whole house. Third, the container walls are very practical. I magnetize many of my decorations, including plants, paintings, and even small shelves, attaching them directly to the wall. This avoids making a big hole in the drywall, however. Magnets scratch very quickly. My container walls are generally scratched in many places, and I would have to touch up with a bit of paint there, on the drywall walls. Using a magic eraser would have required making a big hole in the drywall wall. There are pros and cons to this approach. However, a crucial point. I didn't buy washable paint for my walls, I thought to myself, but who washes their walls? It's stupid. Yes, the paint is not washable, okay? Who washes their walls? Actually, yes. In fact, there were plenty of times when I wanted to wash my walls, give them a wipe down, and on the sponge there's paint, and you're like, damn, I should have gotten washable paint. Advice, get washable paint because there are plenty of times when you're going to want to wash your walls. Beyond these three reasons, during the construction, the advantage of putting up drywall rather than keeping the container walls is that you don't need to sand the walls. That's already very important, and sanding was horrible, so big gain. You don't need to buy a special steel paint that costs an arm and a leg, so you're going to save money and time. When installing drywall, only put it on the walls, not the ceiling. Keep the container ceiling as is, it's very good. And the fact of putting drywall walls on the site, it will also allow you to pass all your electricity and all your plumbing behind the drywall. And that will allow you to do it more quickly. With cleaner finishes and in a much simpler way than what I did in my insulation, I dug scions. Finally, hiding everything behind the drywall is still simpler and it has better finishes. We finally get to my biggest mistake, but I would surely do it again. If I had to do it over, I would make this mistake again. You will understand why I moved in too early. I moved in when I hadn't finished all the finishes. Many aesthetic finishes remained. For example, there were the false beams between the containers, there were the roller shutters, there was the wood siding left. Incidentally, there were quite a few things left. And during this year, I did the siding anyway, and I put in 2 roller shutters. Even though I had many other things to finish. You have to understand my perspective. I was coming out of 2 exhausting and frustrating years of work. There I could finally settle down and rest. And I was too lazy to get back into the construction site, to do things that, moreover, were not essential. And beyond the laziness, living inside means going to the garage for tools every time you need to tinker with something, then bringing them back in. You forgot some tools, so you have to keep going back and forth to get them. You tinker, it works. End of the day, you clean up and put away the tools because you don't want to live in a construction site. Even if your girlfriend thinks your house is too messy and looks like a construction site, you don't want tools scattered everywhere all the time. So you make back and forth trips. And so each little project takes 2-3 times longer and more mental load, in fact, quite simply. Each additional finish is all the more physically and psychologically exhausting as you have to get back to it. You're not in the momentum. You're not like the 2 years of construction you did before where you arrive on the site, you just do that. The tools are there, you get to it, come home in the evening with nothing to tidy up and continue the next day. Occasionally motivate yourself to bring back all the tools to start again and tidy everything up. Well, there you have it. I know that for many of you, in fact, it's a necessity to move in as soon as possible. It's an economic necessity. That's why I say that if I had to do it over again, I would probably make this mistake again. But know that once you've moved into the house, every project, every little job will take time. 2, 3, 4, 10 times more time and more energy and more motivation. Now, I try to motivate myself to take 1 day a week to continue the work and try to finish what needs to be finished. But it's difficult, and it's also all the more difficult because each finish is annoying to do, because I have the damn walls in shipping containers. So all the ripples, I have to find a solution each time to do the finishes. It takes time. It's not as pretty as I would like. So I come back to what I said earlier. If I could start over, I'd use plasterboard for the walls to standardize the finishes. YouTube tutorials can teach me how to complete the finishes. I'd stress less and it'd be cleaner, that's it. In conclusion, I remain convinced that building a house out of a container is a good idea. It's clearly not the best type of house. Anyway, there is no best type of house, objectively speaking. The container house, it has the advantage of being reassuring for self-builders. We reassure ourselves that the structure is complete and robust. As long as we avoid too many foolish actions, the house should typically endure. If I had to build a house today, I've already told you many times on this YouTube channel, I wouldn't necessarily build a container house again because I've already done one. I've already seen what it looks like. I would build a wood earth straw house again because it's more ecological and because I'd rather work with wood than metal. But if you're interested in building a container house, it's a good idea. I considered it a good idea 3 years ago, and I maintain that opinion today. For a first house. As I mentioned, using maritime containers is reassuring, uncomplicated, ecological, and economical with many compelling benefits. We can make a very atypical house, like the House of Berenice that we went to see, for example, or a much more classic house. Like, let's say the House of Florent, for example, where he had put a little more plasterboard and all that. It looked more like a normal house. Let's say you can make a very well insulated house. That I have also proven in many videos on the channel. You can make an ecological and economical house. In short, you have all the possibilities available to you with a container house. So go for it. If you're interested, check out the website mamaisonconteneur.fr if you need help, or subscribe to this channel and watch the dozens of videos we've made on the subject. You should really find everything you need to build a container home under good conditions. That's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I will read and respond to all of them. The goal is that really you have all my feedback, everything I can pass on to you, so that, you know, if for you it's a good idea to make a container house, for you, well, you really have to say it will be your house. Only you can know what suits you or what doesn't suit you, but know that it's not a crazy idea. Well, I'm someone a bit weird and a bit atypical, but in the end, it's a house that can be as atypical as it is classic. As I said in this video, thank you for watching until the end. See you soon on the channel. It was Julian. Hello?